This episode of the thriveLIFE podcast is presented to you by Ror Alexander, powered by thriveLIFE International, and home of the thriveLIFE Challenge. Get ready to discover everything you want to know about fitness, nutrition, and optimized healthy lifestyle hacks to help you truly earn your Thrive Life. Also be sure to keep up with Ror at www.roralexander.com and share the thriveLIFE podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, or the thriveLIFE podcast page on Facebook. Now, with no further delay, let's get on to the show.
Hey everybody, so I am here with Thierry Chow. Thierry Chow is a Feng Shui master.
Thank you for coming.
No problem, thank you. And we're actually at her offices in Hong Kong, which is great. Thank you so much for inviting us to come here today. And I'm really excited to jump in with you and talk about Feng Shui.
Yeah.
And as we'll talk about later, why I think it's really important. I actually think it's a solution to a lot of modern health problems. And I think we're only I think it's almost like it's going to take off again.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we just have to figure out a way to, you change the wording, I think, and change the descriptions of it. But can you first tell us, I'll tell you where I first discovered about Feng Shui and why I became interested is when I first moved to Hong Kong 7 years ago. We were driving to Stanley, and my friend pointed at this building and said, "You see those big holes in the buildings?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Those are dragon windows." I said, well for what? I said, there's no dragons. And but then he explained to me that in Feng Shui it's dragons and they fly back and forth. So can you start off with maybe what Feng Shui is, and then we can talk about dragon windows?
Yeah. So Feng Shui is a practice that goes back to at least 5,000 years back in China. So it is a practice that is about the environment, and the environment and the people and the living things.
So the way the people interact with the environment.
And how the environment would affect us.
Okay.
And I think that, what I hear a lot is that people are like, oh, so Feng Shui is how you arrange your furniture.
Yes, I hear that a lot.
So for me, I always think that's very tiny area in Feng Shui. So in a big picture, Feng Shui is about how the air will affect us, the ocean, the mountains, so anything in the environment.
Yes, and that's what I find is very fascinating. We're definitely going to jump into that because I don't know if you are up to date kind of when it comes to what's going on in the health and fitness spectrum, but there's a big movement now called functional medicine.
Oh.
Yeah, which we'll explain because I think Feng Shui and functional medicine are talking about the same things, but one's a Western concept, one's a more of an Eastern concept. But let's get back to dragons for a second.
Yeah.
Because, if I could tagline dragons, and, we're going to get lots of YouTube hits because of Game of Thrones. So, so what is a dragon window? And what does that mean?
So dragon, the term dragon is actually used a lot in Feng Shui.
Okay. So
in the practice of Feng Shui, when we say dragon, it actually just means the energy that's going through the nature.
Gotcha.
So I think why it was called dragon is maybe it just sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Sounded really, back then Chinese people also really love dragons.
Yeah.
So
I think we all like dragons. The Chinese really did dig them.
Yeah. And so I think the energy is so dominant.
Okay.
That they would name it after.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, Hong Kong itself is probably the most Feng Shui is very important in the design of Hong Kong. I guess 'cause even the way, like you said, it has to do with the mountains and the ocean. And I guess because you have the ocean and the mountains. So another one I know is Vancouver.
Right.
Vancouver's another very popular Feng Shui city. Richmond, and I've heard Richmond. I was always like, why is there so many Chinese people in Richmond? And people would say, oh, it actually has a very good Feng Shui. So what does that? What is good Feng Shui in the environment anyway?
So basically, if you think about it this way, so if you were to pick a location, what would you pick? So would you pick a place that has greens, it has mountains and water, so a super nice environment? Or would you pick the desert?
Oh, I pick the desert. I pick rocks. Obviously, the green grass and the environment. Okay.
So I think what good Feng Shui is just that. It's just picking a place that's good for you to live
Okay.
Yeah.
So then Hong Kong was picked, I guess, back in the day
Yeah.
because of its good feng shui. Something about I guess they described it again, mystical terms, the dragon's back or something
Yeah.
like that. But why is feng shui now? I read on one of your videos, you had said you think at least half, maybe 30% to half the people in Hong Kong believe at least some part in feng shui.
Yes. I think there is different levels
Okay.
of, how much people would practice it or how much they believe in it. But I would say at least 50% people would have something to do
Okay.
with feng shui. It's because I think I have been in Hong Kong for 7 years now,
Mm-hmm.
and the people that I come across, I would say most people are quite interested in it, even if they're not practicing it, they would
Yeah.
still consider the practice a very good one.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting.
Mhm.
That's for sure. Now, speaking about the levels, actually, that's something I wanted to talk about. I've read, like you can look at it like basically Hong Kong, the city was built here because it's good feng shui.
Yeah.
But I've seen articles right down to like how to feng shui your wallet. So is that just a grab to get your attention, or can you actually like feng shui your wallet?
I mean,
Like how small does it go?
I think it can apply to everything in our life. So in terms of personally, what sort of color you should wear, but that is a whole different area.
Okay.
Yeah, but it does. I think it does work in small things.
Okay.
In terms of like, what color, what kind of clothing would you pick? What kind of friends would you surround yourself with? What color your wallet is?
Yeah.
I think that sort of is feng shui. So I guess you can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so where do you see feng shui fitting in modern terms? Because you're very kind of seen as a contemporary feng
Yeah.
shui. I don't know if we should use the word modernizing it, but I'll just use the word kind of modernizing it.
Yeah.
Like, what do they mean? Like, you even describe, I believe, yourself as contemporary feng shui. What does that mean?
Well, my concept was to keep the traditions of feng shui,
Mm-hmm.
so the important elements. So how, the very basic rules or the 5 elements theory, keeping all the traditions, but then giving it a new face
Okay.
or a new language. So in terms of like, let's say dragons,
Mm-hmm.
how do I explain it in the modern way so that modern people can understand that?
Yeah.
And then so also like designing feng shui items,
Mm-hmm.
things like that modern people can really start to understand it
Gotcha.
more.
Do you find that, speaking about items, so I guess in feng shui you have what's called cures,
Mhm.
right? Have you found that some people don't really quite understand that? Like, do they go a little like crazy sometimes with what they think? Well, the rule is I have to have one of these in my home, so they'll put it in, and it's like, what? That just looks weird.
Yeah.
Or something just sticks out.
Yeah, there are a lot of items that are quite exaggerated, like giant dragons,
Mhm.
big ox, and like a copper clock, but they'll be like super huge and
Yeah.
just as
Like a giant
right.
clock right in the middle of the room
Yeah.
because it's just supposed to be there by the
Yeah.
rule, but it just throws off this room at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And I
Yeah.
think most people nowadays don't really like that anymore. But I think in the
Yeah.
olden days, people can still accept it, and it is still part of life for them. But
Yeah.
modern day people, they can't have that in their home.
Yeah,
It would
like
just-
you just wouldn't want to have
Yeah.
that. So how do you go about fixing that then? Like, what do you have to do with that?
That was actually the reason why I really wanted to jump into feng shui, was because I study design and art.
Mhm.
So when I looked at these items, it made me crazy because
Yeah.
it's like, for me, it was like looking at
It's like just really gawky,
yeah,
sort of.
yeah. So
Like a gigantic gold fish statue.
yeah, exactly. And so that motivated me to want to redesign all these items.
Okay.
So how can we actually take the important elements of these objects,
Mhm.
but design a whole new face for it,
Mhm.
but it still works as feng shui.
So you said you had an art background.
Mhm.
So let's actually talk about your background for
Yeah.
a minute. So where did you start? How did you get into feng shui?
So I actually grew up in Hong Kong.
Okay.
I was here until 10, and then I moved to Canada.
So 10 years old.
Yeah, 10 years old. And then I graduated. I studied art my whole life.
Mhm.
And I graduated in Canada when I was like 23. And then I came back to Hong Kong. And I worked a few jobs, and I wasn't very happy.
Mm-hmm.
So I sort of reflected on myself, and one day just sort of sitting at dinner with my dad, and I looked at him and I was like, oh, okay, I think it's like, this is like the right thing to do, is to follow my dad to learn Feng Shui and then put all my creativity into it.
Gotcha. Now, a question about that, actually. I was wondering, did you not have an interest in Feng Shui? Because he's been doing it for a long time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you just, at the time, when you were a teenager, just like, no, that's just kind of weird or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just wasn't a thing for you? Like,
Yeah, that's the interesting part, was when I was growing up, I had zero interest in Feng Shui, even though my dad is a Feng Shui master, and he would like arrange the stuff at home.
Yeah.
But for me, I had absolutely no interest, because when I was younger, I thought it was just very traditional. Only old people would do it.
Yep.
And then second would be like I didn't understand what it was when I was young. So when I grew up, and then when I decided to jump into it, then I started discovering all these interesting things about Feng Shui.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned earlier about the furniture arrangement, and people just think it's a lot of furniture arrangement in mystical terms.
Yeah.
What then are but you also said the furniture arrangement is just a small part of it.
Yeah.
What are some of the other major parts then that maybe people don't really get as much, or the parts that maybe that are more comprehensible to them?
Yeah. So there are examples where I can sort of talk about too. Is for example, if you go to the same area, and there is two exact same bars or restaurants,
Okay.
and sometimes one would be always busy, the other one will always be empty. So, but if they sell, let's say if they sell the same
They
thing,
sell the same thing, same price.
yeah, and why one would always be busy? So Feng Shui is actually takes that, and we actually analyze why that is. So we would look at the location and say, okay, psychologically, why would people want to go to this place more,
Gotcha.
and then not the other place?
Okay.
Yeah. So that is one major part where people think it's sort of superstition, because it's like, oh, why is this place like, why, because it's located here, then it's better, then I can make more money. But I think they forget that there is stuff around that makes that happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then that would be, is that getting into the concept of chi and energy flow?
Yes, that would.
So what is
be
chi exactly?
chi.
Like, what is that?
Yeah, so chi is just a term for energy in English.
Okay.
So it is basically let's say the wind, or the energy that would basically, we would say, a lot of people would say, flow through a space.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's just energy that like the wind would create.
Gotcha.
Does
So does it have to do with physical airflow?
Yeah, so it's more of the air flow.
Okay.
Yeah, and how the air.
Gotcha. So airflow. So it's like kind of like when you're in think of it like when you're in a stagnant room.
Yes.
With no air, it's like just an uncomfortable room to be in.
Absolutely.
Or at the same time, like even my mom today, it was funny because I was just talking to her. She was sitting up by the pool. She was saying, in Thailand, she just finds the air just doesn't move. And
Yeah.
She can't breathe.
Yeah.
But then she's like, at the same time, she also said, but on very windy days, I find it hard to
Yes.
breathe as well. So
Yeah.
she's the same way, right? You can have too much flow.
Exactly.
Or you can have not enough flow.
Exactly.
So how do you know that perfect flow then? How do you find that?
There is different approach to doing it. Feng Shui has different layers.
Okay.
So number one is there is basic rules, or like there's a formula to pick the location.
Okay.
That's why when you say, oh, the dragon flows through here, the
Yeah.
mountains create that dragon. So we would look at that and say, okay, what location should you pick?
Okay.
There's a good example, actually, HSBC in
Yes,
the
it's very
main,
the HSBC building.
famous.
Yeah.
They famously has done the Feng Shui there. If you do go there, you will notice.
Which we are.
Yeah. Okay. That the air really flows.
Okay.
Yeah, in the ground floor area.
Okay.
Yeah. If you
And
stand
the ground
there,
floor is the free area that anybody can just go in, correct?
the area. If you stand there, it's not too hot and it's not too cold.
Okay.
So it's just the right amount of.
And is that based on just the direction of the
Yes.
building?
Yeah. The
And is
direction.
it easterly facing? Is that the thing in Feng Shui? It's more about facing
It
east?
really depends.
Okay.
But there is, statistically, there is a certain direction that is the most ideal.
Okay.
But it really do depend on where the environment
Okay.
brings it. So if there is, so every area is different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we have to look into that and then pick it to the place.
Gotcha. Now, how does astrology fit into Feng Shui?
Yeah.
Because this is where I think the Westerner people started to get a little bit. They're like, astronomy, yeah, astrology, not so much. So how does astrology fit into Feng Shui?
There is.
That's kind of a next level up, right?
Yeah, it is another area of Feng Shui. Like there is branches
Okay.
of what Feng Shui has. So astrology, which is what we call the Chinese astrology,
Mm-hmm.
is one big part of it, which we do too. So we take the person's birthday,
Okay.
and then we take that number, and we calculate what's going to happen with that person, their personality. But if you also think about it, everyone has different. There's no exact same person on Earth.
Yeah.
So I think
Because it goes right down to the hour they're born. Right?
yeah, the hour that they're born. So the Chinese, Feng Shui reading, we do believe that every single person is different, and how can you tell by looking at their birthday, their face, their palm, because we all have different prints.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you look even at their palm.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff to look at.
Yeah. So that is one big part. And astrology, so let's say, I think this birthday reading is just Chinese astrology.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. I'm going to check.
It's because we closed all the windows. There's no chi flowing.
Yeah. And sometimes the Hong Kong.
Yeah, Hong Kong's
air.
not known as the cleanest air in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So itchy.
That's okay. Yeah, we can edit it also. Take pictures if we need to.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where were we? Did you remember where we left off?
I don't know,
Oh,
but
astrology.
it's called
Yes,
astrology. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, so I think what it might be a harder topic to understand because it just has to do with the person's birthday.
Yeah.
So people will then say, okay, well, at least for environment, I have things I can look at.
Yeah.
But for the person, it's like, if I just look at the birthday, why would that tell me?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's important to look at not just the person's birthday, but also their features,
Okay.
their palm again, their energy, their
Okay.
aura. Everyone has different auras.
And then you have the 5 elements too,
Yeah.
correct? And then
Yeah.
some people fall. What are the 5 elements exactly, and how do those fit into Feng Shui? 'Cause
Yes.
I know they're very important in the design of your house and
Yes.
stuff like that.
So the 5 elements comes from the book of I Ching,
Okay.
which is the book of change or the book of life.
Okay.
So it's saying that everything in our environment is made out of 5 elements.
Okay.
Every person is any object that you would come across. So that's why there's metal objects.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the sun would be fire,
Mm-hmm.
etc. So the
Yeah.
5 elements, we would take that and use that to balance a space
Gotcha.
for a person.
Okay.
Let's say if a space it has too much of certain elements,
Mm-hmm.
then we need to balance that out.
Okay. And you could see that sometimes when you walk into maybe a place and it's just like all wood.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, that's a lot of
wood.
wood. Or it's a place that just feels like maybe just way too much concrete. Like some of the more modern homes, just like very concrete and metal.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, you need a little bit of nature in
Yeah.
here. The woman's touch.
Yeah.
In there. So then, do you need, like, if somebody wants to say their house to get feng shui or whatever, do you have to go into their birthday and and all that sort of stuff, or is there like a light version and a deep version?
Yeah. When we do people's feng shui, we do also look at the person's birthday
Okay.
to get a sense of their elements, because
Yeah.
it does have different effects on
Okay.
the relationship with the space. So we do look at that. It can get really deep.
Yeah.
You can look into that person's not just what's going to happen in 1 year, you can look at it, what's going to happen in their whole life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can look at that and say, okay, what's the best location for you to live in?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What happens when there's like a family of 5?
Then we will consider of all the 5 people.
Okay.
Depends, because they would probably have their own rooms too.
Yeah.
So we will look into their rooms and say, okay, what colors are good for you, what colors aren't good for you.
Okay.
And then the living room would be the place that.
So
they
everybody's
share.
own room gets feng shui to themselves.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and then what happens in the common rooms?
The common room then will have a very balanced environment for all 5. So
Okay.
we will usually recommend like very neutral colors, which is like yellow, brown, beige, that type
Okay.
of thing. Yeah.
And then feng shui also, it does have rules though when it comes to a house. So what are some of the really popular rules? Like I've heard one, the sink and the oven can't be across from each other.
Yeah,
they should be beside each other, or like maybe an L shape, but not directly across, because the water interferes with the fire.
Yes.
So is that still a thing with you, or is that kind of like you or is that kind of like where you're modernizing and saying that maybe your sink can be across from your oven?
Yeah, we do still look at that stuff too.
Okay.
So for example, there's an example of a very common one would say, don't put your desk facing the bathroom.
Yeah, okay.
Something like that. And so I would go in and I would explain to people why that is.
Okay.
Number one is, if you're distracted, then that's a no.
Yes. Because you want to get work done.
Exactly.
Obviously.
So that's actually one of the biggest reasons why Feng Shui would tell you not to do certain things.
Okay.
Is the distraction.
Okay.
Is the second would be because of the energy flow.
Yeah. So the first one's distraction.
Yeah.
The second one's energy flow. Okay.
But because sometimes the energy flow can be really distracting. In terms of, let's say, if you have a lot of people in Hong Kong, actually, they will have their desk sort of right next to the hallway.
Okay.
If they're in a big like office building.
And then people are walking by.
All constantly walking by.
Yeah.
Then that actually is an example why it's very distracting.
Yeah.
So the energy is constantly sort of going like this, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that Feng Shui really.
Okay. And I read another one too about not having your bedroom above the kitchen, because it can
Yes.
lead to like heated arguments.
Yeah. That also, when I look at that kind of examples, then I would say, okay, it does make sense. Let's say if your bedroom is above the kitchen, then the kitchen do create more warmth.
Yeah, for
more
sure.
energy.
Heat. Yeah.
So that, as human beings, as the time goes on, let's say a month, maybe it doesn't make a difference. But if you live there for a year and you're sleeping on top of it every day, then that would make a big difference.
Okay.
So,
like because of the physical heat?
yeah.
Okay.
Because we are, a lot of people don't think so, but we are very sensitive.
Yes.
Yeah, to environment, to anything around us. Noise.
Mm-hmm.
Noise is one of the.
Light.
Yeah, light.
Yeah.
Heat.
Heat. Color.
Yeah, color. So all these things affects.
Yeah, and that's where we're kind of getting into that functional medicine stuff, which we'll talk about later too, because it talks a lot about that too. Another one that I read, and this is the last one, I'll stop questioning you on them all, and because what I'm going to get to is how a lot of this stuff makes sense at the end. Is I've read one post that says you don't want to have your bathroom near the kitchen.
Yes.
And it kind of makes sense. Use the washroom. You don't want that odor coming to the kitchen. But even another reason why is because this is a scientific fact that when you flush the toilet, microscopic toilet comes out, up to 10 feet.
Yeah.
So you don't want the microscopic toilets coming out and then settling on your kitchen counter. So functional medicine it's basically now what it does. It's almost like, it's kind of like a traditional Chinese medicine in a way that now looks at the whole system.
Right.
But of course in a more, I don't really want to say scientific term, but in a more Western look. But they're no longer just looking at, so if you go in there with a sore foot, it's kind of like, okay, well, let's not just look at the foot. Yeah. Let's look at what's doing it. So it's right now, the big thing is gut digestion and stuff like that. But one of the things, and the reason that I find it so interesting is because in the last only maybe 5 years, in the health and fitness world, the modern, we've really started talking about the importance of natural light.
Right.
And, getting your body accustomed to, having black night, light blinds at night.
Right.
And kind of rising and falling to sleep with the sun.
Yeah.
And now talking about the use of, red lights when the sun goes down because of the circadian rhythms and the melatonin and all that stuff. And so a lot of it's coming back now to talking about your environment and how important your environment is.
Yes.
And then things like, like having the washroom right next to the kitchen. Well, it just makes sense. That's just makes sense from a point of view. Studies have shown us, we all think that our homes are these clean havens, the home is a clean, because it should be. Your home should be your sanctuary of health when you go out in a crappy world where everything's deep fried and air exhaust and everything. But studies have shown us that our rooms, our houses can be up to 10 times, more chemical laden than outside.
Yes.
So one of these we say in functional medicine and stuff like that, in health, we say you should have your windows open more to bring in more clean air. Well, Feng Shui's been saying that for thousands of years. So there's one thing that they've done for us.
Yeah.
We now know in psychology, and we've known not now, but we've known it for a while, that color affects us.
Yes.
And Feng Shui for thousands of years and saying color affects you.
Yeah.
But we never think about it. But there's certain reasons why, hospitals are the way they are, and psychiatric wards don't use certain colors. Red can be kind of an people think it's not a negative color necessarily, but it's a more aggressive sort of color.
Aggressive.
So, now we're even talking in functional circles about that.
Mm-hmm.
Another big one in Feng Shui I know is your bedroom.
Yes.
Your bedroom should not have a TV in it.
Yeah.
Your bedroom should be a place where you go to relax, de-stress, get another sleep. So now what we have in functional medicine is books written on it about sleeping better.
Right.
What do we say? We say, your room should be, nice colors. Shouldn't feel dark and cluttered.
Mm-hmm.
We should, have no TV in there, no electronics buzzing us away.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, again, that's one of the rules in Feng Shui. It's been telling us for thousands of years, but only in the last 2 years have we started as fitness professionals telling people to do that.
Yeah.
So getting back to the dirty air, plants. How do plants come into Feng Shui?
Well, Feng Shui, we recommend people placing plants in certain areas.
Okay.
So that has to do, again, with the where the planets would rotate. And so according to that, it would give certain areas in the room, in the space, different energy.
Okay.
So certain areas is really good for plants.
Okay.
And we actually, me and my dad, would actually pay attention to how plants work.
Okay.
Sometimes if we place it in a certain area, it would always just die.
Okay.
But in certain area, it would just just keep growing super
so they will
healthy.
thrive in certain areas.
Yeah. So other than but sometimes if they're dying in a corner, but they have the same elements. So they have
they get the same amount of light and you feed them the same water.
But why one keeps dying and why one keeps... So we actually sort of look into that and say, okay, there is something else there that might be affecting these plants.
Yeah.
And then also secondly, it's just that plants, I always recommend to clients anyways, because it is very good for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then again, getting back to the dirty air, right? What do plants do? Well, they clean the air.
Yeah.
And then cleaning the air means if you have airflow, it might as well be clean air, right?
Yeah.
So again, and then NASA has released, a while ago, but it's out there, their top 10 plants for cleaning air pollution.
Yes.
So I just find it really interesting when I started really looking into Feng Shui and things like it, is that a lot of the stuff that now we're only just telling people to do,
right.
They've been telling them to do it for a long time, but we're just catching on now.
Yeah.
We're saying, you know what, your bedroom being quiet is important, and being dark is important, and the colors you have, and the way you have your kitchen is important. Now, I know the kitchen in Feng Shui is very important, because it's like the place of nourishment and all that. So can you explain the importance of a kitchen?
Yes, so kitchen it creates a lot of energy, so because it heats up a lot. So we do tell people to be careful where you locate your kitchen when you renovate or build a house, because it does exert the most energy in your room. So that is number one why you need to pay more attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
And second, it is something that provides food.
Yeah.
So when I look at it, I would actually look at elements like that. So,
Okay.
you know, where you would place your kitchen according to the floor plan. So again, with the bathroom thing, you shouldn't put the bathroom beside the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
So how you lay out your kitchen is key.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so besides that, so what about the light? How does light affect you in Feng Shui? Because I know in functional medicine right now, what we're talking about in health is we are talking about two kinds of light right now. You have your blue light, which wakes your brain up, and your red light, which helps bring your brain down.
Exactly.
And I know Feng Shui, one of its big things, and of course you'll talk about it, is the opening of natural light.
Yes.
So how does light come into play in Feng Shui?
Yeah, so Feng Shui, they always say you have to have enough light, natural light in your space. And that's key to healthy living. And I think when I got into it, I started looking at why that is.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I saw studies of people saying the more sunlight that a person gets, the healthier they would be.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, that makes sense. That's just basically really common, for me, common sense.
Yeah. Should be common sense, but it's really not.
And then there is the yellow light, and then there's the blue, which is actually white light for what we talk about. I think it's the same thing.
Yeah, same. Yeah, like this kind of light, right?
Yeah. So when we say that the blue white light is the moon,
okay,
and then yellow would be the sun.
Okay.
So they say naturally, because the moonlight actually would just wake a person up, and like you can't really relax.
Okay.
When you're under that light.
So the moonlight represents the white light, which would wake you up in Feng Shui.
Yeah.
For us, the moonlight represents the blue light spectrum, which turns on your cortisol, which wakes up your neurons, which keeps you awake.
Exactly.
So there we go. And then the yellow light, sorry.
Yeah, and then the yellow light would be the sunlight, which is naturally what we crave for.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think when you were talking about the curtains, so when you're sleeping, you should lower your curtains. So that's actually quite interesting because Feng Shui talks about the yin and the yang.
Mm-hmm.
So Day is the yang.
Yeah, which is the
yin,
white side.
Yeah, and yin is the dark side. So that is we always say you need to have the balance of the yin and the yang. So day and night is yin and yang. So you need to have that balance.
Okay.
So it's very interesting. I think it's all like...
Yeah, I think we're all talking the same language.
Yeah.
It's just we're using it in very different
Very
terms.
different
That's why I was
terms.
thinking like, even one day even in maybe the modern Feng Shui home, you'll even have like, the lighting will change as the day goes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, we'll have our daytime Feng Shui lighting and then our nighttime Feng Shui lighting, you know? So it's really interesting how it's just kind of all, like, I think, really coming together. Now, how about smells when it comes to Feng Shui? Because obviously, we talk about qi, which is the airflow. Yeah. You probably don't want smelly air, would be my guess. Is that correct?
Exactly, yes. So in Feng Shui, actually, a lot of times they say don't build your house in front of a garbage.
Well,
like
that's good. So that's a pretty good concept.
Yeah. So
don't build your houses in front of garbage dumps. Or on top of sewers.
Yeah. So actually that also goes back to plants again, I think, which what I think is odor, it does cause certain reactions in us.
Yep.
Obviously it's important to pick, obviously not bad odor.
Yep.
And if you walk into a space and you don't smell something, you smell something like not very comfortable, then there is something with it. So let's say, and I find places with, let's say, mold, with if there's like leaking problems, often they do have a weird,
like a moldy smell, like, or damp concrete.
Yeah. So in Feng Shui wise, that is totally not okay.
Yeah.
So I think it
makes sense. Now, what about the opposite? What about using smells to enhance Feng Shui? Is that a thing too?
Yeah, I've been doing that actually to sort of bring essential oil into Feng Shui.
That's what I wanted to get to too, because I know even in functional medicine, like for instance, there's tons of research. They have athletes using peppermint. Because peppermint wakes up your brain.
Okay.
So to me, it's kind of like, and I could be wrong, But to me, peppermint would probably be a good odor to have in your office.
Yes.
Because it would wake up your brain.
Yes.
Where the opposite maybe be like a lavender in your
Yeah.
bedroom. But how do you use? You would say you've been experimenting with it. So.
Yeah, because I actually been working on a project
Okay.
with a essential oil brand. So they
Okay.
have essential oil experts. So we work together and say, okay, what oil is better for relationship? What oil is better for work? So again, peppermint is very good for
Peppermint
waking.
and menthols.
Yeah. And then lavender would be good for relaxing, so
Yep.
sleeping. So yeah, I do find that like ginger, clove, those things would be very good for. Also, if people feel like dizzy,
Yep.
that type of thing. So I find it really interesting, actually.
Yeah,
And-
no, it is. I think
Yeah.
it's really interesting. Another one too is the smell of like pine cone evergreen trees.
Mhm.
They use that a lot in Japan. You've heard of Shinrin Yoku?
No.
It's forest bathing. So
oh yeah. Okay.
yeah, so
Okay.
yeah, exactly once I say it. But yeah, so what happened is the government, they realized that people, like we had said in Feng Shui too, we
Yeah.
talked about Feng Shui is about nature. When
Mhm.
you go out in nature, you feel good.
Right.
Going on the beach, you feel good. This is why you want to live. Like if you look at the population, people like to live near water
Right.
and green
Yeah.
grass. But in what they discovered was that not only did people go in there and feel good, which obviously drops your cortisol too, but their
Mhm.
immune system went up.
Ah.
And of course, your immune system will go up when your cortisol drops too,
Yes.
right? But they also realized at the same time there was actually the scents from the pine trees
Mhm.
actually activated more white blood cells to get created.
Mm.
So then what happened was the guy who was doing most of the research on it said, I wonder if I could take this, like, how can you get if you live in the middle of Tokyo? So what he did is he actually used the scents in an office setting, and the same effects still happened. So people's white blood cells immunity still went up, even though they weren't actually in the trees, they were just using the scent.
Oh, that's
so that's
very
the
interesting.
scent of the cypress trees, I guess, helped
Mhm.
raise their immunity and stuff
Right.
like that too. So, yeah, so odor, again, very, very
Yeah,
important.
very powerful.
Now, speaking of projects you're working on,
Yeah.
what are you working on? You just brought out a book recently.
Yes.
It's a relationship feng shui book.
Yeah. So I've put out a book 2 months ago. So it's called Love and Fate. So I illustrated it, and it's basically like a love guidebook with
Okay.
feng shui advice in it. So how you can arrange your home to have better energy for a relationship.
Mhm.
If you want to find a partner, what can you do to sort of arrange your outfit and stuff like that. So it's out in all the bookstores in Hong Kong. You can also buy online.
Okay.
And the second is I'm working on homewares.
Okay.
So designing modern feng shui home items.
Okay. Like
which
big items, small items, middle items?
I'm gonna start with smaller items first
Okay.
and see how that goes. They're just more like, let's say if they feng shui master asked you to put like a metal chicken,
Okay.
then I would sort of do stuff like that
Yeah.
that you can place in a corner or
Yeah.
on your desk.
But they give me a nicer looking like that cat that like
Yeah,
does that.
yeah, yeah.
Everybody's seen that cat.
Yeah,
It does
the
that.
lucky cat.
The lucky cat. Because I just don't want a lucky cat.
Yeah.
That's cool. So when are you going to bring those up? When are those going to start popping up?
I'm working on it now, so it should be out by the end of this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're going to be for sale in Hong Kong or online and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm trying to probably have an online store,
Okay.
but I'll be selling it around Hong Kong too.
Okay. Now, the last two things I really want to ask you about is the difference between, if you know, the Western and the classical. Now, you do the classical style,
Yes.
right? And you have a compass, a special compass. Could you actually just show the camera and
Yeah.
maybe, you don't have to give a ton of detail, but just give them a quick show and
Yeah.
you can hold it up there and explain kind of how does this compass work?
Yeah, so so here's the compass.
This is right up there. There we go. There,
See
everybody.
that?
There you go.
So as you can see, there's so many writings on it, but this is one of the most important tool for us to look at feng shui of a space. So it gives us a very precise direction of a building or where your door is facing. So all the numbers on there are just like numbers that tells us where the direction is.
And each direction, so it has, there's 8 main directions, correct?
Yes.
And then one would represent, like there's north, northeast, south,
Yeah,
and then they
exactly.
each represent a different aspect
Yeah.
of your home,
Yeah.
right? So what are the 8 directions kind of meaning?
Well, the classical one, actually it gets very complicated.
Yeah,
so
because it's into what's more like the adult man,
Yeah.
and then the daughter and the mom.
Yeah.
Where the American style, I don't want to interrupt and tell you, but from what I've gathered, the American style is more just like, hey, that's where the wealth corner
Yeah,
is. And that's
the
the thing.
wealth corner.
It's like what would you call the Western style? Like
the chicken
ball of Feng Shui. so yours is quite complicated.
Yeah, and so what we do is when we look at a building, that gives us the direction, and then we go into the person's space, and we measure the direction again, and that gives us the precise calculation. So, and then we can from there to get the 8 direction, and there's one in the middle too. So there's actually 9 of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would tell us different things. So there is one for every year too.
Okay.
So every year it changes. So that's why everyone does Feng Shui every year.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they.
When you say Feng Shui every year, so if you design your house, does that mean every year you have to move everything around and repaint?
Yes. Supposed to.
Oh,
yeah.
you're supposed to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So. And
that
when
must become a hassle, though.
Yeah, but I think that's also, I think that goes back to change.
Okay.
I think life, the only thing, there's a saying, the only thing permanent about life is change.
Okay.
So I think the important thing about Feng Shui is that it does help people to change their home.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just always the same.
Gotcha.
And when they change it every year, it helps them to renew that year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that have anything to do kind of with the Chinese New Year tradition of throwing away the old and sort of stuff?
I think it's sort of has a close relationship.
Okay.
Because Feng Shui has to renew every year, and then Chinese New Year also say that you need to throw stuff away. So that's why Feng Shui is always so popular during.
Now, is Feng Shui, could you kind of consider it like a minimalistic sort of? Would you have a minimalistic home? Because I know clutter's a big thing in Feng Shui.
Yes.
Because obviously clutter affects the flow if you have tons of clutter everywhere. So then, and I know another big thing in the West right now is this movement towards minimalism. You know, having less stuff is more and more is less.
Yes.
Is that sort of is that not a principle, but is that sort of an idea in Feng Shui?
Yes, that is an idea. And I think Feng Shui always tells people to, let's say, organize your room. And how I looked at it is, I actually found relationship between a person's mind and their space. So I was actually reading this book about, it's called, I think something about your place. If you look at a person's space, you can tell a lot about that person.
Yeah.
So they were saying that before that person arranged their room, that room was in their mind.
Oh, okay.
So when you have somebody who is cluttered, their mind is probably very cluttered.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so how I look at it is, I think it's very good to try to be minimal, because then it clears your mind.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, but everybody has different personalities and different minds.
Yeah.
So I think if that would be very good if you're that type of person that needs to have that simple life living. And also if you want to just start new, clear out all the old stuff, start new, then that would be a very great way to.
But if you are one of those people that like to collect a lot of junk,
Yeah.
in Feng Shui you would probably tell them, do you help them with more like organization? And just
Yeah.
kind of say, okay, it's great if you love all your stuff.
Yeah.
It's great. You've got 85 copies of
Yeah.
some magazine that are 10 years old. It's great.
Yeah.
But let's put it into a box and
Yes.
maybe, so
Yeah.
organization's a big part of it too.
Exactly.
Cool. So where can people then start to learn more about Feng Shui and how they can start to put, because like you said, it's very complicated. Look at this.
Yeah.
There's 360 probably times 10
Yeah.
calculations on that.
Exactly.
So the normal person is not going to be able to really use that.
Yeah.
So how would a normal person start to go about basic understandings of Feng Shui?
I think there are a lot of books and articles that are about Feng Shui. I think you need to be careful though, because Feng Shui is very misunderstood, and sometimes articles can be very biased.
Yeah.
So if you don't know what you're reading, you can just be reading like very biased opinion on it.
Okay.
So I think it's good to keep an open mind. Read on books and like articles about Feng Shui, and then you take in the information, and I think you just learn the basics from there first.
Okay.
And then I think it's good to sort of look into. I think there are books that goes deeper into Feng Shui too, but I don't know if there's English ones that.
Might be a couple. I don't know. It's been a while, but yeah, I'll have to take a peek. I'm sure that there are English books on Feng Shui.
Right,
I don't know if that'd be great ones.
yeah.
There's the Idiot's Guide to Feng Shui. Feng Shui for dummies.
Yeah.
Because it's just like the Indians. I'm trying to find some stuff on Vastu. It's very difficult.
Yeah,
it's all in Hindi. Like very few things. But like I was saying, I think over the time, I think it's just for Feng Shui. I think it's just a marketing thing.
Yeah.
And I think you're obviously on the right track. But making it contemporary and modernizing it, I think it's important because I think it really is. I think it has a lot of commonalities of now what the West has discovered.
Right.
Yeah. We've discovered it.
Right.
So, we always discover things that are 5,000 years old that everybody else discovered long before us.
Yeah.
So where can people find out more about you then?
Yes.
And follow you.
They can follow me on Instagram, which is my name, Thierry Chow. THIERRYCHOW.
That's a tricky one, the
Yeah.
THIE.
Yeah. And then I do have a Facebook page where I would sometimes upload new things on there. But my Instagram is more updated.
Yeah, Instagram's your number one.
And my Facebook is Thierry Chow and then Feng Shui.
Okay.
And then you can also just Google me, and there's tons of like articles that would talk about Feng Shui and what my take on it really.
Yeah. And you will have a website coming up fairly soon.
Actually I did have a website, and I just need to renew the contract.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So renew the contract. Got to Feng Shui that contract. Feng Shui the account. Great. Well, anyways, thank you. This was excellent. I think people are going to learn a lot more about it. And my real goal was to show people that it really it's an art, but it's also a science.
Yeah.
But to show that, hey, you know what? There's actually a lot more to it, like you said, than furniture arranging. There's actually a lot more background to it, just like acupuncture.
Yeah.
You know, in the West, they used to say acupuncture doesn't do any acupuncture this, and now like 6 years ago, even the Canadian government now covers you in healthcare for acupuncture.
Right.
You know, because they realize, it's doing something. And now it's the same thing kind of with massage.
Yeah.
Where now, for a long time, massage was just really a nothing, but now it's kind of like, okay, actually, massage is a something.
Yeah.
So I think Feng Shui is going to definitely be that next something.
Yeah,
I think when people just start connecting the dots and just understand we're talking about the same things, it's just the language is different. So maybe a guy a couple thousand years ago talked about a dragon, and the next guy talked about chi, and then somebody came along and talks about airflow, and then and then it all starts making sense.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Thank you again for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.